Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah.
You look really skinny, Vince.
I'm
Oh,
not,
thank you.
done a lot of hiking so far. It's been crazy.
Yeah, but you just sent an email saying about how good the beer is too. So
Yes.
it's kind of offsets a little bit, doesn't it?
They have, I was told, more microbreweries in Maine than any other state per capita. And I'm finding that to be true.
Wow.
Okay, I think we're going to get started here. It looks like the time is right. So welcome everybody. Call the meeting to order. This is the Commissioners' Weekly Finance Meeting today, May 25, 2022. Ordered hour 1:30 p.m. has arrived, so we'll get started. And we open every meeting with an opportunity for public comment. Anyone? We have no guests in the room that I can see. Anyone online?
He's online.
No one online. Very good. Okay. With that, we'll move on to item 3, which is the approval of minutes from the meeting of May 18. We'll entertain a motion on that.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. If there's no questions, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. That brings us to item 4, which is our topic of the day. Apparently we just have one, but it's a big one. It's our Financial Analysis Committee's presentation and a regular update. And we have Tammy and Dana with us from Office of Finance. So we have a PowerPoint, I guess, and it looks like the public can see that as well. So I'll just turn it over to you guys for us.
I'll start. Carrie and Brandon are going to help us out today. So they are going to take a
Welcome.
small piece of this. So I'm excited. So before we get started, I just want to take a few minutes to kind of give an overview of some of the things that have been happening and changing. Over the past 8 or so years, we've seen very many positive things happening. The 911 surcharge fee was covering expenses at 911, including the capital. Our debt was paid down. Inflation was at historical lows for an extended period of time, but we're starting to see the reversals on those things. So in 2011, for the first time in a substantial amount of time, our fund balance decreased by about $870,000. While that's not in and of itself, it's not alarming, but the decline has started. Also, we're starting to subsidize 911 again. The surcharge fees are no longer covering it, and the P25 project is gaining momentum, and we just did a bond issue. That's on the agenda for tomorrow. Inflation is at historical highs, and our projections are based on historical trends and known changes like major capital projects and things like that. When we have large shifts, we don't always have them in our projection model, and we don't always, like, for just in case it's temporary, we don't add those into the out years until it starts really affecting our historical trends. So while we are showing you numbers, our gap between our expectations gets larger in a changing circumstance. So during the presentation, we're going to give you the current year status and our year-end projections, the 4-year forecasting. The data is presented from the focal point of the general fund, and fund balance in the presentation is general fund unassigned fund balance plus the assigned for future budgetary requirements. And now I'm going to turn it over to Carrie.
So this slide is showing you some of the county highlights. No county real estate millage changed in 2015 through 2022. The P25 radio project is continuing with the towers under construction, and the Motorola equipment was ordered, and the site plan is ongoing. The nursing home transferred ownership to Alair Health Services. Health insurance premium rates are budgeted with no increase in 2022. Construction began for the bridge bundle project, and the historic bridge preservation began for Hertzler Bridge. Planning has begun for phase 2 of the $5 fee for local use program. The N4 Lawson upgrades are in 2023 through 2024. High inflation, human service funding, the opioid crisis and settlement funds, and the American Rescue Plan funding.
I have a question, if that's okay. So when you say health insurance premium rates are budgeted projected to increase in 2022, is that for the 2023 plan year? Or is that for this year?
That's for this.
Okay.
And this slide is showing you the medical premium rates. They're projected to remain the same as 2021. The decrease in 2021 and 2022 is due to the loss of nursing home employees. And this chart is showing you the nursing home claims versus premiums. And right now, claims are currently less than premiums, but it's not including any, if medical costs only, and it doesn't include admin costs or stop loss reimbursements. And then this one is showing you the total claims for the county versus premiums. And again, it's medical costs only. Here's our retirement ABC trend. It's increasing 4%, or approximately 166,000 countywide. Currently, we're charging 7.5% of salaries. And without the nursing home, that percentage will go up and is expected to go up to about 9%.
Now we're back to me.
A quick question on that. So is that the projection on the increase on that? Is that the actuarial trend about the pay in by the employees?
Correct. It is just the county's agency, does not
Just the
include,
county.
it does not include the employees.
Right, but
Portion.
okay, all right, that's fine. Yes, thank you. I got it.
And the blue line is what the nursing home has historically paid in of the total. It's about 20%. So this is showing the total fund balance for the general fund. And it includes non-spendable fund balance, restricted fund balance, assigned fund balance, and unassigned fund balance. And for budgeting purposes, we use unassigned fund balance, which is unassigned fund balance plus assigned for future budgetary requirements. And currently that unassigned fund balance is 37.1 million as of December 31st. That is a change from what I showed in March. We had a few adjustments that needed to be made when we were doing reconciliations. We found a few adjustments. So it is a decrease of fund balance by an additional 232,000 from what we showed in March. It's 140 days of fund balance, and fund balance decreased by a total of 874,000 since 2020.
Say that again, please.
Fund balance decreased by 874,000
Okay.
since 2020.
Page
It's page 10.
Oh, okay, got it. Oh, yeah. This is the
Yeah.
difference.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
Then flipping to page 12. This is showing, sticking together. This is showing you the difference between our projections in 2021 versus, or April of 21 versus our current projections. And there are no material changes between our projections currently. And we're projecting the year at $33.3 million, which is 125 days of fund balance. So on this slide, it's also showing the graph of how our fund balance has been over the last few years. And as you can see, we were increasing since 2008, and in 2021, we took a slight decline, and we're projecting the 125 days as of the end of 2022. And this graph is showing where we will be on the fund balance thermometer. Turning to page 15, the growth in the taxable assessed value and the building permits remains healthy. Last year, we saw a growth in assessed value of 1.84%, and the building permits, we had 1,018 new building permits. Now, one of the things that our projections were off just a little bit last year was on the real estate revenue. Our collections at the beginning of the year were very high, and so we adjusted it up. But if you remember, I talked a little bit about the assessed value wasn't kind of hanging at the same. Well, the collections at the end of the year did decline a little bit. However, we did meet budget. It was the projections that we didn't meet.
Okay.
So on page 16, when you look at the 2021 budget at the bottom of the page, we did see 0.41% growth above budget. But it was about 400,000 decrease from our projections.
Okay.
Now, the reason I'm preempting that is because we have to now watch 2022 very closely. So page 17 is a very important page. If you look at the far left column that says budgeted assessed value, that is what we budgeted our assessed value to be for 2022 budget. That was 26,089,000,000.
Mhm.
Well, our first indicator that we watch closely is our year-end actual assessed value, and that's on the far right column, at the bottom highlighted blue. That was 25,911,000,000, and that is less than the 26 billion. So our first indicator is saying we may not meet our budget. It's still early. Our second indicator is that 3-month actual assessed value. And that still is okay.
So why, all right, the percentage increases are reasonably consistent. So why did we jump our budgeted assessed value so significantly, 2.3%?
Because I do that off of last year's projected revenue.
Yeah.
We're doing it in September before we have all the data,
Okay.
and our collections fell off at the end of the year. So our collections were coming in gangbusters,
Mhm.
and all of our indicators were showing that our projections we were gonna come in with an increase above what we had originally budgeted and projected. But our collections in November and December and the first 60 days, 90 days of the next year on prior year collections was down. And that's what changed. Because if I have to account for that, the year that hasn't closed yet, or else I would be under budget. But it hurts a little bit when this happens. Doesn't happen often, but it does. So we're watching this closely. I don't think it's going to be a material difference because our growth is still good. But I do think that we will be very close to budget or slightly under. It's
Our
still
growth
too
is still
early.
good.
Our growth is still
Yeah.
good. Yeah, and I knew when I did those projections that it was a little iffy because the assessed value wasn't saying what all of our other numbers were. And it was the collection rates were better
Yeah.
because a piece of this is uncollectible. So
We're not anticipating any significant change due to appeals.
no.
Okay.
The hospital's already off of that, the one that
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
So this was just taxes that weren't paid last year.
No, so what happens is we get a little bit of money in the first quarter. We get a lot of money in the
Mhm.
second quarter. By the time we got to the end of the second quarter, we were substantially higher than all of our historical norms.
Okay.
And so we thought that maybe our collection rate was going to tick down a little bit.
Okay.
And so all of that additional projection that we had built in was based on a better collection rate. However, the second half of the year, it went down a little.
Okay. So the collection rate went down.
I'm not gonna say it went down from the prior year, but it was less than we were expecting for last year.
Okay. And so these are real estate taxes that are not paid.
Some of them go unpaid in the first year.
Okay.
So you have a combination of things. You have people that are paying in the second and third year. That's also included in this number.
Okay.
We money it into one number to make it easy.
Thanks. Thank you. That's good clarification.
Yeah, so it's a combination of things that weren't collected this year, things that were collected in year 2 and 3, and the new real estate tax.
Okay.
So one other question. So we had discussed the possibility that in both the last 2 years with COVID and turmoil in the marketplace, that the timing of collection might shift considerably
Yes.
because of economic dislocation. So did we see any material evidence of that, or was that an unfounded concern? Since you're talking about the timing of collections.
So I think our collections are up in 20 and 21 in comparison to previous years.
Okay. You mean
But
cumulatively or on a month over month, year over year scale?
well, it changes dramatically from year to year.
Okay.
It really does.
Okay, all right.
It's a very hard predictor, and some of that comes with,
Even though most of it comes from the, okay,
you have new
Right.
properties added on,
right,
you know, so that shifts it.
okay.
Most people, you're right, most residential are paying with their mortgages.
Residential is, yeah. Yeah, that's what I was getting at, but I don't know what the balance between residential and commercial is. So we've got a lot of commercial properties coming online.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
That's fine. That's fine.
I can look that up though. I'm gonna write it down so I don't forget.
It would be good to know that. Really, you don't remember
I don't.
that?
I should because we just did a bond issue. It's in there. It's in the operating statement.
Is it in the rating report? I don't remember seeing it in there.
I don't think it's in the
Okay.
rating report. It's in the longer operating statement that's posted with the
Okay,
bond issue.
all right.
I don't think it's in the rating.
Okay.
They talk about the top 10 taxpayers, but I don't think there's more information.
Okay.
So on slide 18, I'm gonna talk about the comparison of 2021 actuals to projected 2022. And as I talk on this, I'm going to keep the numbers on the screen. There are words behind for if you want to look back and see. Our real estate tax revenue is projected to increase by about $1 million, which is 1.88%. Other revenue is decreasing by $23 million, and the majority of that is related to the Emergency Rental Assistance Program and COVID-19 Hospitality Industry Recovery Program. And that is also offset by decreasing expenses on the other side. Plus the transfer into the nursing home is decreasing about 7.8 million. And the right to use lease is increasing 136,000. That's an accounting entry. That is both revenues and expenses. And then on the expenditure side of the equation, the overall expenses are decreasing by $18.7 million. The majority of that is related to the revenues that are decreasing on the previous page. And that's on page 20. The capital is increasing about $900,000, and that's the court's audio visual project, the county building projects in general, the forensic investigation division equipment, and then of course the right to use lease. Any questions?
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna turn it over to Kim.
On the slide, a little different than you've seen in the past, some of the past, present, future changes. CARES Act, we had a large computer lifecycle replacement that's going to be expected in 2025. Public safety's uniform funding has been covering all the eligible expenses, and this is beginning to shift and will no longer be covering all of the eligible costs. Inflation's been historically low, and this is changing quickly with the historically high rates of inflation. Retirement, medical, and indirect costs will be impacted by the sale of the nursing home. We have American Rescue Plan funding. Debt, we have two bonds in 2022, a $15 million bond for the P25 project, and another bond expected in 2024. And then we had some one-time pass-through monies in 21 of the Emergency Rental Assistance Program and CHART. Some of the other major assumptions in the projections is the loss of the nursing home indirect cost revenue. In the projections also is no nursing home subsidy for 2022. Again, the 911 uniform funding is projected to no longer cover all the eligible expense. Court-related costs are increasing as cases are getting ready to go to trial. We have some big cases. The P25 infrastructure project, the first bond, the state has said what the sale was today. Interest payment in November of 22 and the first payment in 23. And then we would have the potential second bond in 2024. Capital is increasing in 23 and 24 for the M4 loss and upgrade, and increasing in 23 for facility projects that's on their 10-year plan. Current projects do not include estimates for all the additional projects and high inflation. This assumes aggressive management as always of our cost drivers.
That's a big assumption.
Some of the major pressure points: farmland preservation, our radio project and the 2 bonds, technology and upgrades to software and hardware, with the large computer lifecycle replacement in 25, the loss of the indirect cost payment, some of them that were not in the
But,
projection.
I'm sorry, Tammy, what does that mean, loss of CNRC indirect cost payment? Like, and why is that a pressure point?
They were paying in almost $600,000 to indirect costs. So in our indirect cost plan, all the admin departments and stuff, all our costs gets all spread out to
Okay.
the other departments. And they have a portion of it. So that's money that we will not be coming back into the general fund.
Those are also costs that we're not bearing.
That's not necessarily true because it's a piece of all of our salaries. So a piece of my salary is charged there, a piece of Tammy, a piece of all the budgeting staff, a piece of payroll, a piece of the
Right.
controller. So it's just a fraction of everybody's salary that's compiled and billed out. Because we were charging as much direct as we could.
Okay. Okay,
Some of the other ones are inflation. We have the evergreen wage study that's ongoing, recruitment and retention and aging workforce. The state budget's always a pressure point. We have use of CNRC sale proceeds, capital cases, there's a few of those. The American Rescue Plan funds and CNRC's contribution to the actuarially determined contribution retirement.
And so maybe I should restate it a little bit too, because I do think over time, indirect costs will right size themselves. It will just take multiple years. Because there are some things that will go away. But some things will just be able to do more, get some of the things done we weren't able to get done before.
Right. I mean, that time is freed up to it, and presumably is a cost savings going forward. So either that or we misrepresented true costs. So, which I would assume is not the case.
Yeah. And an example could be our purchasing office. We never want to go below 2 purchasing agents, but we haven't been able to do training the way we want to. So their time will now also be spent in training when we
okay.
get there. So.
The slide showing our projections for 2022 through 2026. In 22, we're projecting fund balance to be about $33.3 million. In 23, we're dropping just below the 100 days of fund balance. And in 24, we drop below our 70-day of fund balance. Some of the assumptions in our projections: salaries are projected out with a 3% average yearly increase, and that's based on the union contracts, merit-based compensation, looking at overtime trends. Benefits have a little bit of a decrease in 2022, but a 3.7% increase in 23 through 26. Operating expenses, there's a decrease in 22, and it's due to all of the pass-through monies, the revenue and expenses decreasing that we had in 22 or in 21 that are not in 22. And a little bit of decrease in 23 because there's still a little bit of the pass-through monies in 22. And then we have a 1.4% average yearly increase in 24 and 26. And that's based on current trends with the inflation. I don't know if we'll hold on to that 1.4. We'll just have to see, time will tell. Subsidy, there's some decreases in there. It is mainly due to 911. And it's not that their subsidies decreasing, it's because for me, to keep everything in line, I've got their subsidy in one line and the debt in another line. The two of them, yes, their subsidy is increasing, but for me, trying to keep track of where their subsidy is going to be in this new bond, I had them separated. Once their new bond is rolling and calculating it, I'll roll it into subsidy. So that's why you're kind of seeing that decrease in there. The capital's projected out. The biggest increases are in 23 and 24, Lawson and Ford, and then facilities has some projects on there. And some of the other assumptions is the 911 radio project with the bonds. And as the project's moving along, we'll also adjust our projections accordingly. In addition to bond financing, we'll offset some of the project costs with the assigned fund balance that's in the general fund. But the uniform, it's assuming the uniform 911 surcharge formula will not be adjusted. In P25, that there's always a high probability. We're so early on in that project that there could be some change there.
Just one point. Based on looking at the assumptions, this is the first time I've attempted to look at it, I'm sorry. So a number of these things you've mentioned are non-recurring costs that would be eligible for our funding through the ARPA money. Correct?
Some of that, yes.
Okay. All right.
And for Lawson is eligible, radio project.
Yes.
Plus revenue replacement is pretty wide open.
Okay, thank you.
This slide's showing you the unassigned balance, and really what we wanted to kind of mention is that downward trend started a little bit later than what we had projected in past presentations. That's a lot because of the CARES Act and delay of the P25 project. It's something that we did expect, but it just got pushed here a little bit later because 20 and 21 were better than we expected. This line here is showing you just a graphical representation of the projections. You've got the red bars for revenue, the blue bars for expense, and we also show you the projections where they were. The green is a year ago, yellow is the projections from this past fall, and the black line is our current projections. The next slide is showing you the break even. So the first line is showing you where our projections are currently. And the blue numbers underneath are just the difference between revenue and expense. So you can kind of see what the gap is. And then we show the break even, and the break even is 12.5% in 2023, 1% in 24, and 1% in 26 to try. That's what it takes. It could be a change in expenses or revenues to kind of keep our fund balance where it is. And the next chart is showing you some of the tree projections, some of the options of what different percentage changes and what that effect would be on our fund balance. So the first line is just our current projections, and then the second group is 0% in 2023, different options. There's a 2% different options in 23, and then a 5%. And you can tell times the sooner we start making changes, the better the out years are looking. And all these projections are really within our range of what we expect to happen. And then this next slide is just kind of showing you what a 1% positive change looks like and what a 1% negative change would look like. The same way with the 2% positive ongoing change and 2% negative change. So you can kind of see how that impacts fund balance. We just wanted to put a slide in here with a nursing home. Nursing home was contributing 20% of the county's ADC and the indirect costs that were being paid by CNRC. So it's just a chart showing you what their costs were. I'm going to turn it over to Brandon.
All right. Examples of ongoing changes can be changes to revenues or expenses. Revenues would include millage, department fees, collections, and interest rates. Changes to expenses could include farmland preservation, debt service for major projects, subsidy to other funds, grants to other organizations, salaries and benefits, capital cases, and an increase in CPI leading to higher costs. And this chart showing what a $2 million positive and a $2 million negative change would look like over the next 4 years. And and then this slide, this slide showing what a $5 million positive change and a negative change would be for the next 4 years. And all of those are within our projections. And the importance of compounded changes, the earlier the earlier the change happens, the sooner, or the greater benefits or negative impacts it would have in future years. The comparative tax rate, this is still using 2020 financial reports. So it's the same as we presented in the fall. And Cumberland County is still lowest property tax per capita. And this chart is new. It's showing a millage rate comparison since the last third class counties, since we last did a millage rate increase to the county real estate taxes in 2014. Couple of things of note, you'll see we have a 1% increase from when the library real estate tax increased in 2017. Lancaster County had done a reassessment within this time frame, but it was a budget neutral reassessment. So I have that at 0%. And Northampton lowered their tax millage rate by 1 mil due to being in the top 10 counties with highest tax burden on their taxpayers.
And was that their impetus for dropping their millage rate?
Yeah.
That's what was published.
And what goes on in Lackawanna County? That's a huge millage rate.
They may not have done a reassessment
Okay.
in a long time.
Yeah, or it could be based off of a rate decades ago.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think Wes would let us do that. Right?
No, we wouldn't want to do that. Not at all. And that's why Lancaster, while their millage rate went down, they did budget neutral. And when you do a reassessment, you can do up to a 5% increase on your budgeted revenue.
Okay.
Like on the,
Separate from the impact of the reassessment, though. Right.
But you have to set your new millage and it can't be more than an
Right.
estimated 5% increase. It can be budget neutral, lower, it can be.
Yeah, but the reassessment itself is supposed to be budget neutral. They can account for other drivers
Yes.
with the 5%.
The 5%, the other drivers like new properties and stuff are not included in the 5%.
I'm not sure I'm clear on that, but we can talk about it later. Okay.
so on the previous slide, Lackawanna shows about $88 million of real estate tax. So it's not like they're collecting some astronomical amount.
Are there any additional questions?
Dana, Vince here. Where, if anywhere, are the proceeds from the nursing home reported?
They're not in this yet. We still have the nursing home proceeds in the nursing home fund. And we don't have them allocating over to the general fund until the commissioners make the decision on how that allocation will occur.
Okay,
How and
thank you.
what?
Presumes we will know what that number is, which we do.
Correct.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Any questions? All right, if we're done then.
So on page 39, the 2020 real estate tax is in millions. That's millions. Page 39. Okay. And on one of our very first pages on assessments, that's in billions.
Billions.
Got it. Okay. Just making sure. Make a huge difference.
Yes, it does.
Okay, very good. Thank you for the presentation. A lot of good information in there. A lot of food for thought there. So if there's no other questions, we'll close out item 4. There are no other topics for discussion listed, so I'm assuming we can move on to item 5, which is other business. So now's the opportunity. Anybody has anything they want to add, bring to the table? Now's the time. Staff, commissioners. Silence. Some silence is cool. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We're gonna mute you, Vince.
All righty.